Really quick, before we begin, as I mentioned in my most recent Bridgerton video, which was about the season 5 announcement regarding Francesca and Michaela being the next A-plot, most of this video I already wrote a while ago, but I got busy with other things, including the rescue cat who is still in our bathroom waiting for her appointment to get spayed, so I just tweaked a couple of things and then finished the last bit of this review so that I could finally record it and finish off my coverage of season 4. Thank you all for being understanding about my having lower energy right now because of other things I'm processing offline that have nothing to do with Bridgerton or entertainment media in general. Now, on to the primary topic of today's video.
It's my favorite movie of all time.
Yeah, me too.
I'm just going to thank Cantony for being iconic and the Cantonese in the fan base for saying what needed to be said for years, because my tinfoil hat opinion is that if the show didn't get so much backlash from that portion of the audience for not letting us see them get married, who knows if we would have gotten that adorable Benofi wedding mid-credit scene. If we had yet another Asian woman being deprived of her on-screen wedding, it would have been total carnage on social media. Do you see this? Pot, spoon, stir.
Can I say something mean? Yes. Yes, yes. Yes! Yes! I'm here. I'm listening. Tell me.
Hello romance girlies, I'm LadyJenevia, and on my channel I talk about entertainment media. Did I say all of that just so I could use one of the TikToks I have saved on my phone while I still had the app, on the offhand chance that I could use those for a cutaway just to mix things up a bit on here? Maybe so. I need to use them up sooner rather than later because I don't really want to keep using them in perpetuity unless they're too timeless to ignore.
Viva Palestine, up the IRA. All right.
We are back today to talk about Bridgerton Season 4, Episodes 7 and 8. Thank you all for your patience. I've been busy reviewing all sorts of films on my channel, including a brand new film starring the one and only Viscountess Bridgerton herself, Simone Ashley, a film called This Tempting Madness. It's a psychological thriller, so feel free to go show that review some love. Much appreciated. Now, both of these last two episodes run slightly longer in runtime, so I'm not going to cover each and every event or development or character moment. I typically aim to not be overly serious with these videos because the very notion of asking me to take seriously the woes of English aristocrats, you're already asking a lot from me.
Oh no. He lives.
And if you think I use too many cutaways when I make these videos, build a bridge.
Build a bridge out of her!
John's funeral is underway, and seeing everyone in these fierce black outfits has me wishing we could get more gothic romances made on screen. On the big screen, though. If you recommend something new for me to watch, and it's on streaming, no, you didn't.
You look me in the eye. And you admit you thought I was cheap.
Hyacinth asking her older siblings if this funeral is like their father's was, sadly noting how she didn't get to go to that, and Gregory puts his arm around her and says that of course she was there too, just in their mother's belly. That was so cute and not that reassuring, but it is well intentioned, and that is my chaotic himbo in training.
You brought a scented candle into the jungle?
My mom gave me that. It was like a weird gift for Mother's Day.
Your mom gives you gifts for Mother's Day?
And the chaos of Eloise trying to get all of the siblings to take a biscuit and distract Francesca from her worries. More of that, please. More of the family dynamics and somehow managing to inject a sliver of humor even in the darkest of their days. Quite literally dark because they're wearing all black.
Those golden curls.
Those rosy cheeks.
That smile.
Sophie helping Francesca to get a moment to herself upstairs because she's already part of the family at this point. She's emotionally attentive. She's very good at emotional labor, just like her pretty soon husband, Monsieur Capybara. I do love to see a couple so in tune with one another.
My bad.
And now that we have the announcement of Francesca being next up on the show, that small interaction could act as a prelude of sorts to Benofi being able to appear on the show again and be allies to that couple on their journey towards happily ever after.
Lesbian pudding?
When Benedict and Sophie meet outside and she comforts him and did the thumb rub, my mind instantly jumped back to Cantony outside when he had a panic attack over the bee stinging her and she held his hand on her heart and rubbed it with her thumb And tell me why you couldn't prioritize letting the two Asian leads of the Bridgerton family talk to each other? Do you just incorrectly assume that Asian women aren't socializing with Asian women from other parts of Asia? We're the largest continent in the world. This is very basic geography you should have learned in primary school. Michaela's suggesting to Francesca that they have a smaller gathering to celebrate John's life, and she outright refers to John as a Scotsman. The show is not and has never been historically accurate. Why do you refuse to let the Scottish characters have actual Scottish accents? I don't care if nobility in Scotland back in ye olden times were speaking with the same unbearable posh accent as English landlords. If you really care about diversity and you want to market yourself using said diversity, then you need to put more accent diversity onto the show as well. Thank goodness for the working class characters this season, because at this point I am going to need to hear Sophie just to keep me going. Where are the Scots? You couldn't let John be from Glasgow?
I don't even know if that would make a difference. I think Scottish weather, the way it is, it's meant to be this way. It makes us stronger people. That's why Scottish people are so hardy.
Lady Danbury has a scene with Violet, which was nice to see. I wish we had had more of those sort of interactions between them, but anyway, if Lady Danbury is leaving, but she's not actually leaving the show, which is what viewers have been saying to me in my comments throughout my coverage of this season, surely she needs to be bringing back Gareth, right?
Where is he right now?
Viewers have also been saying to me in my comments that it's been said on the record, somewhere, I don't know where, that none of the book love interests are going to be changed. That's not me saying that, that's me simply saying what I'm being told by the people who keep up with that chatter more closely. If the information changes, of course we will adjust our view of things accordingly. But if Lady Danbury were to return in season 5 with Gareth, then maybe we could have recurring scenes of the two of them together, which I imagine I would really enjoy.
It's okay. It's not the end of the world.
No, it literally is the end of the world.
Francesca has more to worry about as she believes she is pregnant, and this involves the House of Lords, and I am going to need to reiterate this point because I don't know how much this might come up again in future seasons, so I want to at least mention this now so that if I mention it in future coverage, you will have had time to read up on the required reading at this point if you want to truly understand what it is that I'm referring to.
I hate to break it to you, but I'm gonna.
Whenever the show this season was mentioning the House of Lords, or whenever the House of Lords was mentioned in passing in this or that of the Bridgerton books that I was reading or rereading in this last month or two, I found myself full of disdain. It always soured my immersion in what should have otherwise been a romantic occasion, because I read a book last year called The Strange Death of Liberal England by George Dangerfield. It's a history book, and it covers a few things, but among them, one of the earlier inciting incidents that lays important groundwork for the book's time period and the interconnected political issues that this book discusses is that the House of Lords had veto power in Parliament. And then they lost that veto power, and as a result of that loss, the Tories, who were their allies, and or perhaps they are simply one and the same, but anyway, they threw such a temper tantrum that they proceeded to fan the flames of orange violence in Ireland to try to sabotage the Irish question, that being the matter of Irish independence, autonomy. They fanned all these flames. All of this is explained far better in the book, mind you, than me hastily listing things off in a video such as this. But I read that book because it was referenced and recommended in the James Connolly Reader, which I had read before and after reading some other books about Irish history. So when the Bridgerton show or books try to make references to the House of Lords as if I'm supposed to be fine with them being included, as if their opinions should have any sort of weight, or even if they're mentioned as a foil of sorts, it makes little difference to me because ultimately my reaction is always going to be disgust. It's like being offered a dessert, having a sample of it, and discovering that they used salt instead of sugar. It's guaranteed to ruin the vibe of romance, which is the entire reason I tune in to watch this show. And I'm not going to stop reading history books just because doing so has made me increasingly more hostile towards the aristocratic background of these characters. But if the show doesn't maintain its focus on romantic chemistry of whichever pairing is the A-plot of a particular season, and instead they ask me to worry about the character's aristocratic problems, I'm not going to care. And if you think that's me lacking in sensitivity towards this or that character on the show, No, it's because I'm justifiably enraged at learning what these people have and continue to get away with in real life.
So I don't know what else to say. Should I sing a rebel song?
The look on Violet's face when Benedict reveals that he loves Sophie. Oh, the much needed laugh I got from that. In an incredibly despair-ridden episode. Benedict, my darling capybara, you probably should have mentioned that part to her much sooner. You of all people, Mr. Emotional Labor of the family, you should know that your mother cannot resist a true love match. You think she won't manipulate the law and be stealthy and conniving just to ensure that all of her babies get to secure their happily ever afters? The pure comedy of Violet immediately doing calculus, you can see it all over her face. All of the recalibrating she needs to do now to make sure that these two end up together. I love to see it. And I love that she immediately goes to Sophie and tells her that she approves of her character, as in who Sophie fundamentally is as a person. And Violet is trying to suss out any clues or information that she could use to maneuver these two down the aisle. Thankfully, Sophie is highly secretive because just like if Benedict had made it clear to Violet sooner that he loves Sophie, if Sophie had been clear with them about her origin story, there would be no story to tell for this season because Violet would have come up with a plan 5 episodes ago to get those two together and the season would have been wrapped up already.
As soon as that foot goes in that glass trotter, I'm gone, mate.
Hyacinth being all torn up over the trauma of experiencing the death of a family member and Gregory saying that their mother should have stopped at 7, as in 7 children. Absolutely perfect line delivery. Very exasperated older brother who doesn't really mean that because he adores his family, and if anyone were to try to hurt them, he would undoubtedly join in on the brawl. I've said it before, but I will say it again because there's always new people who will randomly find a video that is 50 references deep because of how long we've been talking about Bridgerton over here on my channel, but I don't want to see Gregory and Hyacinth seasons right now because they're still teenagers.
She's a child!
But I am going to need the show to be eventually renewed to do those love stories because I know that when those two are more central characters in the ensemble and especially in their own seasons, they will have so much to work with and have all of this room to create a whole new type of familial banter because it even says in the book, I don't remember if it was for H or G, but it was one of them. And they said that they are very much the babies of the family, so they're in their own little unit together as a duo. And by the time they're the leads on the show, who knows how much the other actors who have portrayed their older siblings will be around if they're instead off busy with other job offers after hopefully having had enormous hit seasons of their own. They're really going to need to springboard off of one another to deliver that zingy Bridgerton family banter. Now, Hyacinth, this baby is spiraling. She just figured out that death exists in a whole new way. I love that she's telling Eloise that Eloise was right, because Eloise has been valid. I see you in my comments picking on her and complaining that, oh, well, she's being too selfish. No, that's not the issue. Eloise is the only sensible one, but they will never let her be the suffragette she really should be. Because if they were to do what needs to be done on this show, there would be a lot more property damage, guillotines, riots, armed struggle. Oh no, I'm daydreaming about Avatar again. This was the part of the video when I was originally going to talk about Francesca's examination, but I more or less copied and pasted most of what I was planning to say into the video that I did about the announcement of Francesca and Michaela leading season 5. So again, go ahead and watch that video if you haven't already. Now back to Benofi, because reminder that it is their season. Their hands touch in his office, or I suppose it's technically Antony's office. I will always welcome some premium Bridgerton romance hand stuff. Violet giving Benedict a pep talk and encouraging him to follow his heart, follow love. Things are starting to get to where they need to be. We already saw in part 1 that Violet cares about Sophie. It's not a stretch for her to go ahead and adopt Sophie as her next daughter-in-law. Posey sneaking out of the drawing room window to visit Sophie and give her the hug she wanted to give her half a season ago. Cinema.
Isn't this fun? It's just like a sleepover. We should order pizza. Hey, Cosmos. Harley, focus. Okay, yeah.
I adore the way they let Posey have more agency to try to help Sophie. first with the shoe clips, and now by giving her this warning, and being so assuring to Sophie about how good of a person Sophie is, and how Araminta is wrong. That wasn't in the book. This is a prime example of how to modify the source material for the better in the adaptation process. They did that a lot with more or less everything Benedict has said and done in the show, compared to the toxic caveman he was in the book, but the changes they made for the better for the A-plot of season 4 have absolutely made me far more optimistic about both seasons 5 and 6. Benedict coming over and cheering Francesca up at the piano and making her laugh. There he is. There's Mr. Emotional Labor. He is exactly who I thought he was in seasons 1 and 2. And that emotional labor gave Francesca the clarity and calm she needed to let Michaela know that she would in fact like to go ahead and celebrate John's life. That's the type of interconnectivity I want to see on this show within the Bridgerton family. You only have 8 episodes. Use that on the show's namesake, which is Bridgerton. Araminta and Posey's scene together of Araminta seemingly making a genuine apology to her and giving more context about the actions she's taken. It's taken a while for this show to finally do a villain storyline that I don't want to fast forward through. This character was cartoonishly evil in the book, but on the show they made it to where there's no misunderstanding about the fact that yes, she is the villain, but they give you enough range and texture for her story in the writing, and of course the way that Katie plays her, that she's interesting and able to fill that space well. And not to jump too far ahead, but there is a finality to Araminta's arc on this season where she's lost the fight, and that's that. Before Araminta, they would have these absolutely heinous villains, well, 2 of them anyway, who are so egregious in their transgressions, and then the show just expects me to overlook the severity of what they've done and be fine with them still being paraded around on the show as if I should be okay with them now. No, I rebuke that.
What is she doing? Just a goose. Have a nice day.
I haven't mentioned this until now because it kept being repeated throughout the episode and it would have felt tedious to keep bringing it up. But Sophie had misplaced her necklace. Unbeknownst to her, it went flying off in the midst of all of that salacious intimacy with Monsieur Capybara.
Oh, you smell like dick. What the fuck you been doing?
As she's making her way towards leaving to get a job with a different family that will be leaving England altogether, Sophie opts to leave without the necklace and also leave the glove behind. So in a sense, she has now made the choice to let that truth be easily discoverable by Benedict, that she was in fact the Lady in Silver. But guess what? Benedict already figured this out by finding the necklace in his room and recognizing it by comparing it to his drawings. And I love this revelation. The drama, the romance, and I love that his art was part of the equation, because if you've been around on my channel for long enough, you will know that I had said this at some point. I have no idea which video it was in, because I've made a lot of Bridgerton videos at this point, but I had said somewhere something along the lines of how, what if Benedict figures out that Sophie is the Lady in Silver because of his art? He will have been drawing the Lady in Silver, and he will presumably be drawing Sophie as well. If he's got these drawings, what if something falls or something gets placed on top of his drawings to where he can only see the lower half of Sophie's face, and he realizes that she's the Lady in Silver? Now, this is a slightly different idea that they've gone with since they chose to focus on the necklace instead of her face. But even so, I love that just as I had hoped, his art was part of him finally realizing that Sophie and the Lady in Silver are the same woman. Great storytelling should make sense and follow the things that have been set up and organically follow the path that has been forged by all that you've already seen. For Benedict, his art has been a central component of who he is as a person. Why wouldn't you involve that art in a major moment for his love story? And this whole matter of the necklace is so satisfying because if you think back to when Sophie was with him at my cottage, she took the necklace off before going out and about in one of the Bridgerton family's signature color is blue-a-dabba-dee-ba-da-bye dresses, so he didn't notice it then. And even though it was visible before it flew off of her when they were being intimate.
Intimate? Is that how old people say sex?
Of course he's not going to notice the necklace then because she's got her Brits out for the first time in his presence. His gaze was preoccupied elsewhere.
Beautiful wife. All right, come on then.
The way Benedict ran down to the kitchen to look for and inquire as to her whereabouts, all in a panic, the man is literally sweating. I do enjoy seeing a lovesick fool. When are we going to have an instrumental cover of Love Fool on this show? I mean, on title alone, it would have to be Gregory, wouldn't it? Though they don't go nostalgic nearly often enough in their song choices on this series, at least for my liking anyway. I'll put it to you this way. If it's been used in a Baz Luhrmann film soundtrack, you need to consider it for this show. No one does a soundtrack like Baz Luhrmann. This show could never be on that level. The Quindon Tarver version of When Doves Cry? Are you kidding me? How do you take a perfect song by Prince, of all people, and do yet another perfect version of it that is equally iconic? It's nice, it's different, it's unusual. Unfortunately for Sophie, the episode ends with her arrest, courtesy of Araminta's vengeful spite and Posey's youthful naivete. That poor girl, her mother was kind to her exactly one time, and what happens? The sister she loves the most gets arrested. See, this is why you don't trust people with a track record of cruelty.
I don't like the mother, I don't like the father, I don't like any of them. Nope, none of them.
Episode 8, Season 4 finale. When Varley looks guilty at learning from Posey that Sophie was actually a good person with a kind heart.
Does having a kind heart make you a good nurse?
And she most certainly didn't deserve to be arrested. That right there is exactly why you need to not be so quick to forgive these people with a long track record of cruelty and malice. And I will not be forgiving a single one of these sloppily thrown together so-called redemption arcs for the cruel characters on this show. Thankfully, the truly good-hearted people on this show are the working class characters who work together to get word of Sophie's arrest to the man who loves her. Considering how long I spent rereading this season's book to do source material videos going through that in order to fill the inexcusably long off-season, I will admit that I was expecting the show to deliver a lot more drama in the jail, given the whole jailhouse rock kerfuffle that plays out in the book. I was expecting us to spend longer in that setting and air out the drama and secrets there. But once I got over the surprise of how quickly we were out of there, all things considered, I am mostly satisfied with how they resolved these last few threads of the story. Violet playing the helpless rich woman in court who cannot get anything done without her very important lady's maid. That is comedy. I do like when the show uses the antiquated social norms to their benefit, like when in season 1 they used gossip as a weapon to rid Daphne of the burden of marrying Nigel Burbrook.
Demon! I will kill you as many times as I have to.
Benedict and Sophie's conversation in the hall, where they have this gap between them, I loved everything about this. I love that Sophie is not wearing a terrible wig with a distracting hairline. I love that Sophie is open about her fear of Benedict being disappointed by who the Lady in Silver really was, that the space of the hallway between them is a physical reflection of the way that they still haven't figured out how to crack the obstacles that are keeping them from being fully together. And that Benedict reassures Sophie that the very last thing he feels at learning that Sophie is the Lady in Silver is disappointment. That means now it's Sophie's turn to be brave and make a grand gesture of love, so she does just that. She sneaks into Benedict's room and finally tells him everything. And this is when I can't help but laugh just a bit, not because her pain is in any way amusing, but the fact that truly, if she had simply been upfront about this sooner, Benedict would have pointed out the obvious to her, which is that Sophie has no reason to believe that Araminta is telling the truth about a will that Sophie hasn't even seen. And I know people are bound to talk about this scene because of the bathtub and all that transpires within it, but I am infinitely more satisfied at having the catharsis of these two finally talking about everything, reaching the culmination of their character journeys, her being brave enough to tell him everything, him giving her guidance about finding the truth of what's in the will, him apologizing for asking her to be his mistress, and her still not wanting him to propose just yet because she cares about the reputation of his family, which of course is only going to make him love her more because he is Mr. Emotional Labor and he adores his family. So it's this escalating feedback loop of them loving each other and saying and doing all of the right things to make that love even more expansive. This is what I imagine sports fans feel like when their team wins a championship or whatever the sport's highest merit is, but they had to experience trials and tribulations to get there. They didn't know if it would really happen, but now it finally has. Bathtub shenanigans. Best thing about this exchange was the communication. I don't know how much this point was made clear to viewers of this season, who did not read the book first, but in the source material book, it was repeatedly emphasized in Sophie's inner thoughts that she absolutely does not want to have a child out of wedlock, especially with a gentleman, because she is worried that this child could potentially end up in the same horrific conditions that Sophie had to go through. Sophie and Eloise getting along well with one another, Eloise not being bothered in the slightest that Sophie will now be part of the family in the truest sense instead of just as a member of the staff. They set that up nicely since it was made clear in part 1 that Eloise really loved how smart and well-read and accomplished Sophie was. They will get along very well, although we will probably hardly see that moving forward considering how overcrowded this show's ensemble is. If they were going to up the episode count of a season, surely they would have done so already, so if that's not an option, they need to trim things down. Season 4 is the closest I have seen to them getting the balance of storylines correct since season 1, but season 1 was still undoubtedly the best at being clear, in no uncertain terms, that a Bridgerton season is first and foremost about one couple. Nothing else is more important than that storyline. So next season, the most important storyline will be Francesca and Michaela. Sophie recruiting Eloise to help her do a bit of covert sleuthing. This was a team-up I would have loved to see a hell of a lot more of, but, you know, as I said, too many storylines. Also, Claudia's line delivery is truly unmatched. The way that she is trying to maintain cover so Sophie can do her sleuthing and breaking and entering. When Eloise eventually does her season, things are going to get ridiculously fun, and I will be there. Don't you know that I love to see a hilarious woman stumbling her way through getting her happily ever after?
Joined the gym yesterday.
Oh, the one round the corner.
Yeah, did you go?
Loads! Never!
Now, the best team has teamed up once again to break into where they will uncover the hidden truths stained in ink on a comically large piece of parchment paper.
Fortunately, funeral bouquets are deductible.
And they've done their work to set Alice Mondrich up to finally have something to do in the story. Coming comically late, but at least something is happening for them now. We might as well talk about this at this point in the review. The whole matter of this new Lady Whistledown, realistically for me, it can only be either Hyacinth or Alice Mondrich. Of the two, I think it makes much more sense to have it be Hyacinth because she is younger, she has the sassier personality of those two characters, and Julie Andrews' new Lady Whistledown voice sounds far more like Hyacinth's energy than Alice Mondrich's. I also look at Penelope's arc with using that newsletter as a means of expressing herself, but once she got married and became a mother, it was no longer interesting for her to do. It's also really time-consuming. Hyacinth has nothing but free time. She hasn't even made her debut yet, though maybe she would do that in season 5, we will have to wait and see. And Hyacinth is far more opinionated and needing to express things, and she's already started to become disillusioned with the realities of having to interact with the men of the Tawn to try to find a marriage match. That weird boy wouldn't even get her a lemonade. Hyacinth, did you even like that boy, or was he simply tall?
One of the lessons is caveat emptor.
Now, I wouldn't mind them letting Alice do the Lady Whistledown gig because the quality of the storylines for the Mondriches has been very inconsistent, and if she is Lady Whistledown, it would be a more clear-cut task for her to do. I would be fine with either one of those two characters doing this. I am more so impatient about wanting to know if we will get to meet Gareth next season, because why is Lady Danbury leaving but not leaving the show, if not to go elsewhere and return with her eligible grandson, who is newly estranged with his mean-spirited father?
And I will. I cut you from my will. I'll leave you with nothing.
That's fine.
Michaela being stunned into silence at learning from Francesca that Benedict is in love with a maid and the family is supporting him, that to me strongly suggests that we are foreshadowing them being open-minded about Francesca doing her endgame love story with, you know.
Woman.
So, I don't think we talked about this before, but I'm assuming the vast majority of us are all thinking the same thing, which is that John knew that Michaela is not interested in men, which further strengthened their familial bond, and that would be why he was so protective over her when Francesca was trying to introduce Michaela to various eligible men of the Tawn. Francesca asks Michaela to stay in London, which she says she will, but here's the drama. Francesca platonically holds Michaela's hand, but the camera is close up on their hands, and Michaela carefully pulls her hand back, and you see in her face that she looks conflicted. That is clearly setting up a realization that she has, feelings for Francesca. But I love that they involved hand stuff in it. The first visible realization that we see of Michaela having feelings for Francesca, and it is right after their hands touched. Everyone stop. My show is on. The title of the show is Hand Stuff. Question for the audience. If you were going to guest on Bridgerton, what sort of romantic hand stuff would you want to perform? Here is mine.
We're gonna all get together and we're gonna go
Hyacinth offering to be forever spinsters with Eloise. I love them. That's sisterhood. But Eloise giving Hyacinth a pep talk? That is a sign of maturation and character growth. Though I do hope they don't try to force her to be overly serious as a character moving forward. Let her be funny. And when she communicates to Hyacinth that she has now realized certain upsides of marriage, including companionship, family, and Eloise loving the deep and meaningful bonds that she has with her siblings, if you've read Eloise's book, you will see that they've basically listed a checklist to set her up to do her love story with her eventual husband named Philip.
Do you know what that was? That was a Scottish vacuum of charm. Yeah, that was...
Hyacinth says to Eloise, if I am to one day find the right husband, I think I should like to get to know myself better first. That's more or less a thesis for what they will presumably be doing with Hyacinth next on the show. She definitely seems to me like a season 7 lead because there was some character material for her this season. Gregory, on the other hand, just had a couple of crumbs to show that he will probably eventually become a chaotic himbo, like he was in the book. All good with me.
I get nervous because she opens her mouth and just an encyclopedia of beautifulness comes out, and I just never said, you know she's trying to kill me?
Violet and the rest of the family sneaking Sophie into this ball. We've never been more pleased that she and Edmund had so many children. This large crowd of people you're not looking closely at? Yes, that's all my family. No need for a head count. Eloise having exactly one interaction with Posey and giving her a perfect pep talk for Posey to be able to land herself a man whom, as far as we can tell, seems all right. I'm going to interpret this as a prelude for Eloise to offer guidance to Hyacinth once she makes her debut and set her up to be one of the only likable stepmothers we seem to have in romantic fiction. Sophie gets to give Araminta a stern talking to about the will, the embezzled dowry, and listen, Araminta is 100% wrong, and we do celebrate her downfall, but Katie Leung acted the hell out of this scene, so where are her accolades? Where are they? Hand them over. Why, oh why, would they introduce Sophie with the surname of Gunn? You could have still had a cover story positioning her as a person of nobility without taking her name away from her. And Sophie and Posey get yet another hug, this time with a declaration that they are, in fact, sisters. And the ending for the family is entirely fair. Araminta is defeated and Rosamund doesn't get her match, but it is, in fact, by them being humbled by Sophie and forced to do what is right, that they are spared from getting stuck maritally entangled with a fortune hunter, while Posey gets to make a match. I am of two minds about the Posey ending, because on the one hand, I'm irked that I had the book's second epilogue in mind, which was a more detailed setup and meet-cute of Posey getting her love match, but at the same time, if they hadn't given her character that romantic closure on the show, now, in season 4, then we might have been stuck with that as an open-ended thing that we would have no idea of whether or not it would ever be properly addressed. Freddie Stroma has been shackled to Peacemaker for too long, and now that that's finally out of the way, what else does he have going on? Little to nothing as far as I can tell. If you don't let me see a Friedwina appearance at least once before these 8 seasons are wrapped, what was that season 2 finale declaration for? I want season 8 to be the big send-off where everyone pops back for at least one scene as a big celebratory thing. So if you're not going to do a Friedwina spin-off, at least let me see those two together in season 8. Happily married. Varley returns to Portia, disgusting trash ending. Propaganda to make the workers of the world subservient to oppressive employers, I rebuke that, and if they continue to shove this character into future seasons, perhaps I will simply boycott her in my reviews as an educational reminder that boycotting works. I have 3 words to say to you. Mary Manning Grapefruit. Sophie finally gets her dance with Benedict. She knows how to dance now. If we're nitpicking, I might have asked when exactly Sophie had time to learn this dance, since it was made very clear that she missed out on her dance lessons when she was growing up. But they look too adorable and in love together that I will allow this plot hole. And him following that dance with a very public proposal, everyone can see them. I love to see my favorite Bridgerton get his happily ever after. It's been quite a journey for me, as a person who has been very public about declaring him as my favorite Bridgerton from seasons 1 and 2. Could you imagine how nightmarish it might have been if his love story on the show didn't end up being good? But it was entirely worth the wait. Now, any sort of rewatching of this season would in fact consist of a fair bit of fast forwarding through subplots. But the A-plot of this season, Benedict and Sophie's love story, fantastic work. The new Lady Whistledown, as I said, my first guess is Hyacinth, but we will see if they do a quick reveal in season 5 or perhaps draw out the intrigue of this new identity for a bit longer. Mid-credit Banoffee wedding, again, the committee of Banoffies would like to extend our warmest gratitude to the Cantony delegation for all of their hard work advocating for Asians in the Bridgerton universe. Because now we get to see Alfie walking Sophie down the aisle. Benedict finally finished a full painting, and it's of whomst? Sophie Baek, his muse. And that is the exact button this season should end on. I must say that now that my favorite Bridgerton has wrapped his love story, that takes so much pressure off of covering the second half of the Bridgerton family. It would have been a nightmare if I had had to spend these couple of months complaining that they had ruined Monsieur Capybara's love story, but it was so beautifully executed, and both Luke Thompson and Yerin Ha did exceptional work in portraying Benedict and Sophie. Of course, I hope that the next 4 Bridgerton love stories are just as well done, because it is far more fun to talk about a Bridgerton season if the love story is done well. So just to quickly hit some of the main points of these last 4 Bridgertons. I will be going through the Francesca book as a way of doing a bit of cross-comparison between source material and show canon. It's a way to also help pass the time during this far too long off-season of this company's horrendous business model. If you're going to be a Debbie Downer about the fact that Michaela is Michaela on the show and not Michael, you don't need to show up. It's supposed to be a fun communal discussion, speculation, brainstorming, all of those sorts of things. I don't want anyone scolding anyone when we do those videos for suggesting a different story idea for how to potentially do the A-plot of season 5. It's all meant to be fun. Season 6 will of course be Eloise. For an Eloise season, my very early wish, which I don't actually believe will happen because this show likes to lean into the not fun kind of melodrama more often than not, but for an Eloise season, the first 2 examples I think of for a broad vibe I would like to see is Miranda and Selfie. And what I mean by that is a woman who is an over-the-top amount of hilarious, and a man who can be funny, but he is also more often than not a bit more of the straight man, and I mean that in the comedic sense. That's the character who offers the contrast to the more over-the-top hilarious character, or characters. Eloise is the Marx Brothers, and Philip is Margaret Dumont. If you don't get that reference, you have 4 years to catch up on some Marx Brothers films. Season 7, as I said, right now my opinion, which is subject to change depending on how the storylines unfold, I will currently say that I hope it's Hyacinth's season, so keep the last 2 stories in the book order. I hope that we introduce Gareth in either seasons 5 or 6, because it would be nice to see his relationship with Lady Danbury before he and Hyacinth do their love story, and it would also be nice to get that deeper insight into Lady Danbury as a character by having her be able to do more scenes with one of her immediate family members. And then season 8, chaotic himbo Gregory, who has had the least amount of meaningful character development or exploration thus far on the show, but I have no issues with that because if we get all the way to his season, that will air 8 years from now. There is time to set him up to be a lead. If you want an early introduction to his or Hyacinth's books, I've already done those videos. We didn't cover the full stories because I just didn't really want to get into discussions of the more mature and salacious material while the actors are teenagers because it would weird me out. And we might as well see how they develop over the next season or 2 before we begin to get into more detailed discussions of how they might adapt those final 2 stories for their own season on Netflix. Thank you all for following along with my coverage of season 4. Viva Banoffee!